Hello guys and welcome to a new video series. I'm Dean.
I'm Felix.
And you're watching a build with Billet Labs. So we have been commissioned by a customer to put together a small form factor PC. They have selected these components you see in front of us, and it's up to us to figure out how to fit all of these and the cooling into a 13 litre case.
So let's take a closer look at the components and see what we're working with. So here are the components that the customer has chosen. Obviously we've got the monoblock, we've got a i9 14th gen, we've got a 4090, basically everything to make it as hot as possible. But the case, this is a Johnsbow N1, it's a NAS case, but looking at the overall dimensions, it looks to be the perfect size. We haven't opened it, we haven't looked at it, we don't know if everything will fit, but we think it will. So we're going to open it now and have a look.
Okay, the Johnsbow N1. Let's see what we are working with here. Wow, that is a pretty case.
I mean, we're going to have to chop a big hole in the side, I think.
No, it's too pretty to chop a hole in. Let's take it apart and have a closer look.
So, is
there
that,
appears to be a thumb screw on the back.
Shall I do it?
Give it a go.
Oh, we got a cable in there. Okay. So we're going to have to chop out most of this.
So being a NAS case, it's got this board for multiple hard drives, which we will not be needing. So straight away we're going to be getting rid of this cage.
Also this fan, I think to fit everything in, we've worked out from our other build that we're doing as well at the moment, that we need, what is it, about 330 millimeters.
Yeah.
This case is 340, I believe. Might be 350, but this fan is definitely taking up much too much space at the end. So we're going to have to lose that.
Okay, I think the next step is to remove the hard drive cage and actually fit a motherboard with the monoblock attached, just to see how it sits.
Yeah, agreed.
As it stands, this cage is in the way.
And we've looked at the specifications for this case and the CPU cooler height it can handle, and our monoblock is within that dimension. So we should be able to fit the motherboard on the original standoffs with the monoblock on top of it.
Well, let's explain first, why did we go for this version of the case? Because they have a similar version which is a more conventional sandwich layout, right?
They do, you're right. I think it's I forget what the model number is. The customer liked the look of this, which is probably the main reason that we started with this style of case. And
we didn't expect to keep much of the innards anyway.
Yeah.
Because the monoblock is quite unconventional in how you assemble it to a case.
Yeah, but yeah, to answer your question, we chose this case rather than the other slightly different version of it because it's much easier to work with a solid piece of aluminium rather than a piece of aluminium with mesh and perspex on the side like the other version has.
Okay, so that's the case. We're going to have to remove a lot of the innards, the hard drive cage, this board, the fan, leaving us really with just the motherboard mount. And Felix thinks, and to be honest, I think he's right, this side panel is not going to give us enough cooling. I like the idea of keeping a nice pattern on the side panel rather than having a big hole.
But we can do something pretty, we can do something nice with that, definitely.
Yeah, because it's a shame to ruin such a nice bit of metal. But the most important thing is getting all of our components inside here. And that includes a radiator.
Yeah. Something good that I've noticed as well is this whole internal structure slides onto this. It's like a dovetail at the bottom here. So we don't need to worry about mounting stuff to the outside of this part of the case. We just need to make sure it's one solid assembled block in there. And as long as it fits within the outline of the shape of the case, the whole thing will slide in. So that does make it easier.
It's a nice design, and the fact only one thumb screw got into the case, I really like that.
Yeah, that's going to be nice for taking it apart, servicing it and stuff like that.
Okay, let's take it apart.
Let's do it. Cool. So we've stripped out most of the case. We've taken all these bits off, this daughter board, the fan, and we're left with this. We don't have much of it left. Because we've taken away a lot of the bracing, this motherboard panel is quite wobbly, so obviously that's not going to work as is. So this is our test ITX board. This isn't the final board that the customer wants. We don't want to be using their board and getting scratched up and stuff while mounting it and unmounting it multiple times.
Okay, so the next step is to get the motherboard into the frame. I was going to call it a case then, but there's not much left of the case. So we're going to get this mounted, get the monoblock mounted onto the motherboard and see if it fits. Because if it does, if the motherboard and the monoblock fit into this half of the case, then we have all of this side of the case to play with for cooling. I'd imagine this would just be radiator and fans. So, let's get this in. Okay, so there we have it. The motherboard and monoblock are in the case. It fits. If anything, we've got too much space.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it fits too well. Like there's wasted space here now. Should we put it in the outer case and see what the gap is like down that edge?
Let's do that.
Yeah, that's such a big gap, isn't it? Like 10 or 12 millimeters of wasted space.
So the original mounting position for the power supply is here, obviously, but we cannot go with this. We have to have the power supply and pump over on this side of the block. It's finding the best way round. It's going to be something like this. Pump here, power supply here, radiator over this side.
Yeah, so the case would be kind of split in half, like everything cooling related this side, everything else this side.
And we've still got to get tubing in there as well. But there's plenty of space. 13 litres is a nice amount of space to work with. There's plenty of space to get tubes and fittings.
Yep.
Now, we cannot afford to go any smaller than what we have here. This is a 280 by 45, is it?
55, I think.
55mm radiator, and it works. With fans at full speed, it keeps the CPU and a 4090 cool.
It does. We haven't tried it with a 14900K, which we're using in this build, but we've had it with a 12900KS, which is similar in terms of heat.
Right.
And yeah, we've had them both running, and neither of them thermal throttled. I think we were at, 50 degrees on the GPU and low 60s on the CPU. What I'm worried about, though, is whether the wasted space we have here, because there's a gap of about 10 or 12 millimeters between here and this inside face, whether that is wasting space that we could use for a thicker radiator or a thicker fan on this side.
Because at the minute, I don't even think you might just about get 15mm fans onto that radiator. You will.
Yeah.
But you're not going to get a 25mm fan.
Another option is to, if you've been watching our other build that we've got going on, we are making our own case, and we could use that layout to switch this around. So we could have the monoblock mounted to a hard panel here, the motherboard, sorry, mounted to a panel here, then have the monoblock basically take this half of the system, put it here, and then stack the radiator and the fan on top. And that might be a better layout. What are you thinking, Dean?
The problem with having the radiator on this side of the motherboard and monoblock is you've restricted access to the motherboard even more. Having the fan on this side isolates it from the rest of the components. If you want to get in there and switch your SSD or RAM, it's easier having the motherboard on this side away from the radiator. Anyone who's worked on a small form factor PC could tell you. Sometimes it's a bugger working on these things. And that's what I like about this case. It's actually really easy to get to the innards.
Yeah, you can just see everything
So
with one screw undone.
Exactly. So I want to keep the feature of this case.
Yeah.
It's nice to work in. It's got a good layout. It's got bad cooling. So that is definitely something we're going to have to change.
Yeah.
And like you said, we've got wasted space down this side. And if we want to squeeze all of the performance out of the cooling system, we have to bring this over. It's only going to be by 15 mil or so, but that's the difference from having 15 mil fans to 25 mil fans.
Yeah, 15 mil is a lot.
If you come around and have a look at the rear I/O,
Yeah.
what we're going to do is move the rear I/O over to the right slightly. We're obviously going to lose this cutout for the power supply, and we may utilise a mounting point here for the radiator. That's something we have to figure out, how we're going to mount the radiator.
Yeah.
But that's easily done. And if we can do it all from this back panel, it's easier for us. We only have to machine one panel then.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think that is the best way. So, I mean, the back panel will probably just, for the sake of testing and prototyping this, we'll just cut out most of this just so we still keep the little thumb screw that holds this to the rest of the case. And then we've got freedom to move the rear I/O around however we want to. And then once everything is built, then we can fabricate a new rear panel.
So looking at the case, we've got three major components to the case. It's this base.
The remainder of the case.
Yeah, the central chassis of the case.
Yeah.
This base I'm quite happy with. I love the way it fits the outer skeleton. So other than a few venting holes for airflow, we're going to leave this piece mostly unmodified. However, we do need to move this central spine over. And if we look underneath, the central spine is only mounted by these two screws. So we only have to drill another hole, offset it, and remount it there. First, we need to measure up how much space we have here between the top of the GPU backplate and the side panel.
Because every millimetre counts.
So I'd like to get it back in, and then we can have a proper measure.
18.73. I'll do the bottom as well. 18.5. So if we call that 18.5 minus the thickness of the case, which is 2.5. So 18.5 minus 2.5 is 16. Minus 1 for tolerance is 15, minus 2 for a riser cable, 13 millimetres. So we want to be shifting the central spine this way by 13 millimetres. I think. Do you agree? Is my maths all right?
I trust your maths, Felix.
Okay. So we've made some modifications to the case. We've moved this central spine along by re-drilling the holes in the bottom. So they're 13 mil further along. And then I've also spent some time with a Dremel just cutting this away so that the cutout for the I/O is much bigger to allow for the moving motherboard here. But what we've just realised is we've just put this riser cable on where it would be, and I think, well, I'm pretty certain that it's going to interfere with the case here. So I'll try just putting it in and see how far off we are. Yeah, we're miles off. Okay, so that looks like maybe 10 millimeters too high. If you look down here, I don't know if you can see in there, but below the motherboard, there's a good amount of wasted space here. So we can shift this whole assembly down by a centimetre or so, or basically till the motherboard hits the bottom of the case. And hopefully that will allow for this to fit inside here. If it then still doesn't fit, then we might have to go back in by a millimetre or two until this does just fit in here. And then we'll be certain that we are making the best use of the space on this side of the case. So next up is going to be to modify this central spine again to allow the motherboard to be a bit further down. I think the easiest way to move this down is, first of all, we'll have to cut this cross beam out of here as well, so a bit more dremeling and filing there. And then we want to adjust this spine, and the easiest way is probably to add another bend here. So we'll take this off, probably flatten out the existing bend so we've got some material to clamp to, and then add another bend about here. And then we will drill and tap new holes to mount it back to the bottom piece, and hopefully it will fit perfectly. So I have straightened out the original bend. I've then marked 10mm down where we want the new bend to be. I've also drilled and tapped new holes to M4, so they'll be slightly bigger than the original holes, so we can use a slightly larger bolt for a bit more strength. And now I'm going to attempt to bend this along this line that I've scored here. So we've reattached the modified bracket. We've got this new bend in here. We've got everything mounted as we intended. It's a bit wobbly, so I'm holding it up for now. But we still have a slight issue, which is that the riser cable doesn't quite fit. So I'm thinking we've probably got enough material in this plastic piece to just file the edge off. Moment of truth. You ready? Oh, look at that! That's awesome.
Good job. That is a snug fit.
That's a very snug fit. I'm liking that a lot.
So that is the motherboard side of the case completed, for now at least. We've got the riser cable, the monoblock and the motherboard all spaced as we want them. The gap between the riser cable and the edge of the case is just a fraction of a millimetre. It's a very snug fit. So the whole reason for doing this was to open up more space on this side of the case. Because over here, this is where we're having the radiator and fans. And as you can see, there's not a lot of space, even after the modifications. We've got two 25mm fans, and there's not a lot of space here. We're thinking of using the radiator as an intake. That means air will be coming in from the side panel of the case, and then we'll be exhausting it out. But the problem with the case is there's not much ventilation for that hot air to get out. There's nothing along the top panel, and there's nothing along the bottom panel. Therefore, we're probably going to have to put fans, exhaust fans, on the top of the case. Otherwise, this hot air has got nowhere to go.
We've got the space though, haven't we? There's plenty of space above, well, not plenty, there is some space above the radiator and the block to fit a couple of fans on the inside.
There is.
So that won't be an issue.
So come over here and have a look. You can see there's not much space here on this side of the radiator, but that's fine. You've got a couple of mil, so I'm not too worried here. But if you come over this side, the fan is pretty much touching the center spine of the case. There is a gap between the spine and the motherboard, but that's only 6 or 7 mil. There's not a lot of space. And if I just slide this out again, you can see there is more space here. I'm yet to put in the power supply. In fact, we can do that now just so we can eyeball the space.
Yeah, let's see it all laid out.
My initial impression is that we may have to go for either a thinner radiator or thinner fans. I didn't want to have to downsize the cooling. There's a chance that perhaps we'll keep the 25mm fan on this side of the radiator and use a slim fan here instead. But these are all things we can test. At least we know it fits. There's a bit of wiring and plumbing still to figure out, but the main components, they're in.
Yeah, it's definitely going to work. What's the space like at the other end, like before the back of the case? Yeah, that's good. So yeah, we got some space for, well, the inlet and outlet ports are currently here, but they'd probably be this end, just so we've got the space to play with. Or the whole radiator will be shifted this way slightly.
I can spin that around. It's going to be tight.
It's going to be tight, but that's the fun of small form factor builds. But yeah, I like your idea of having a thicker fan there and a thinner one there potentially to keep the thick radiator. I think we're going to have to do some research or even some testing to see whether thick fans and a thin radiator is better than thin fans and a thick radiator for any given overall thickness.
Well, it's better to have more surface area. So if we could get 2 thin radiators in, it's better than having 1 thick.
That's an idea.
So yeah, there's still a few things to decide. What fans are we using? Are we going to stick with this radiator? We also don't know how we're going to mount the pump or the power supply. So there's a few brackets and things that we need to fabricate. But other than that, Felix, how do you think we got on today?
I think pretty good. I think I'm very happy that it fits.
Yeah, it does fit.
I was worried that we'd have everything squished together as much as we can and it still wouldn't go in. But it went in and there's 5 or 10 mil of leeway everywhere.
When you've got power tools, you can make things fit.
Yeah.
Which is what we did. Okay, so that's a wrap for today. Thank you for watching. That's been a build with Billet Labs. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video and we can't wait to see what we come up with in the next episode.
See you later, guys.
Bye.